Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. It's Pop again, Dennis Murray. Today's Mother's Day, of course, and happy Mother's Day to all of you moms out there. Uh, I'm thinking about my mom today, and I'm particularly thinking about my wife, Gail, today, um, who asked to be called Mimi when she became a grandmother. So I'm wearing a shirt. I'm going to change the camera angle so you can see it. Mimi gave me this about 20 years ago. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit much anymore, but I just had to wear it today. Um, I don't know if you can read the text. It says, Pop, love you, Mimi. Uh, and she's my gal. I was able to send her a video greeting of her Mother's Day. They don't have FaceTime calls on weekends at her facility. She's in a wonderful memory care unit just a mile or so from the house. Um, but I was able to speak to her Friday and uh, have an appointment to speak with her tomorrow as well. And today they kindly went around to her room and brought in a big screen TV on wheels and played my video clip for her Mother's Day greeting. So, important things first. Okay. So, today I want to talk about the gender aspects of the two ways of judging. Uh, Most of the psychological skills we have um, are not gender related. The statistics are that as many men as women have the two different ways of perceiving. And there's some other psychological skills as well, aside from perceiving and judging. But judging is gender related, and the tricky part is it's really a statistically small difference, but because of certain psychological factors, it has become seen as a big difference, and it's become enmeshed in history, culture, patriarchal expectations, cultural, religious, historical. And Jung really cracked open that nut and started to look at what's inside and was able to show that there's uh, there's no reason to be dismissive of the second kind of judging, the kind most often associated with women. And it was in time shown that that's not a statistically valid difference anyway. So the two ways of judging, one is by using a rule book. You'll put the thing to be judged as far away from you as possible, striving for objectivity. And you are as logical as can be. So your brother-in-law gets a speeding ticket. You're an assistant DA in that county, and your wife asks you to fix her brother's ticket. And of course, you say no, because the logic of the case is there's a rule, he broke it. He should suffer the consequences that anybody else does. And she says, but it's my brother, Harry, and he's the godfather of, two of our kids, and he's been dear and sweet to us, etc. And you were being, completely illogical, and you say it doesn't make any difference. It's irrelevant. And of course, your own brother, who is a person who judges by personal preference, uh, takes your wife's side of the case, takes her, the brother-in-law's side of the case, and explains to you that in personal terms, the consequences to him of having this ticket are enormous, and uh, he doesn't have the money for the fine. He, uh, has a pretty good driving record, and his insurance is going to go up because he had that one car crash earlier in the year. um, it's going to have big repercussions. And don't be an idiot. Don't just be logical. Pay attention to the totality of circumstances, including your wife's strong feelings, and intervene to fix this ticket. And the other way of judging um, is this personal preference. And historically, it was considered that that wasn't a valid way of judging, that only the logical and objective way of judging was of any validity. And historically, it was considered that that's the way women made judgments, and it was referred to as woman's intuition. It was intended as a pejorative. Um, and the facts, as we've been able to study them in the past half century or so, um, are that 60% of men judge more by the rule book, and 40% of men judge by personal preferences, what I like to think of as the photo album. And conversely, 60% of women judge by the photo album, and 40% judge by the rule book. Now, 60-40, it's only 10% off of 50-50, which would be even Steven. So there'd be no gender relationship to this aspect of psychological skills at all, but for a 10% change. But 60-40 isn't a sufficient ratio that something called tipping occurs. There's actually a book about this a dozen or so years ago, but it's a much older concept. At least I know people that have been using it for a long time. That when something reaches a certain level, 1/3, 2/3, then we tend to just think it's all one way or the other. In other words, we want to really pay attention to the facts that it's only 1/3, 2/3. We just say, oh, well, women are from Venus and men are from Mars. That's total bullshit. Uh, it's just completely unsupported by the evidence. But that's the way things are perceived. They tip. There's enough of a difference that people ignore the fact that it's not an all or nothing situation and turn it into an all or nothing situation. So women's intuition was a gender related slur, but also part of a very large patriarchal historical pattern, so reinforced by religion and culture. And also, it was evidence that there wasn't any appreciation culturally of the validity of this way of making decisions. And Jung reversed that. He showed that over the course of a lifetime, people who make decisions on personal preferences have enough opportunities where the kinds of things that aren't well decided by logic need to be decided. And their skills at deciding those kinds of things, almost everything to do with personnel in employment and with personal relations in the family, those people their skills at that are useful enough to themselves in their own lives and to the community that over a lifetime, it comes out about even. They don't make every decision correctly. The people who use personal preference, they make mistakes like everybody, but neither do the logical people. The the fact is we all make mistakes because by whatever method we use to make decisions, because the facts are so complicated and the world is so complicated, and most of our decisions in life involve dealing with others in one way or another. And we're individually extremely complicated, as we each well know. And now, when you add the complexity of dealing with a bunch of others, it's complexity squared. So, of course, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. But Jung showed that this was a valid method and that statistically over our lifetime, it came out about even. And now we see in the past, 50, 70 years, enormous progress in expanding the cultural acceptance of women having roles outside of a domestic role and expanding the cultural perception um, of appreciating both ways of judging. And so that's enough for Mother's Day. Once again, happy Mother's Day, moms. See y'all tomorrow. Take care.